Hello class, welcome back in our online discussion, and we are now in Unit 3, and we will discuss about the receiving and resolving guest complaints. So at the end of this unit, you should be able to deal with complaints from the guest, and you will able to determine the proper course of action to take when there are guest complaints. So we all know that the problem are constant. We cannot avoid problem. We cannot avoid complaints, and that is normal for any service provider that they will encounter complaints from the guest. That is why it is important that the service staff must also know how to resolve, or what are the proper course of action to take when there is a guest complaint. So before we will proceed to our formal lecture or discussion, we will listen first to Miss Naomi, again, the ASEAN Master Assessor, at the same time a trainer.
Complaints arise when the needs or wants or wishes or expectations of guests are not satisfied at all. However, guest complaints, when resolved correctly and quickly, provide the opportunities to improve the service and to develop a good relationship with the guest. Good day. Welcome to the third unit of Food and Beverage Service NC2, Introduction to Food and Beverage Service. In this unit, you will learn the procedures for handling guest complaints. This unit will also show the importance and benefits of recording complaints, as well as the guidelines for referring complaints.
So that is the background about this unit number 3. And we have the lesson 1 for this unit number 3. We will discuss about the dealing with guest complaint, how to deal with the guests who complain, the guests who did not able to receive their expectation on the service that we provide in our establishment. So again, complaints arise when the needs and wants or wishes, as being mentioned by Miss Naomi, are and expectations of the guests are not satisfied. So if they are not satisfied with the service or products that we provide to them, that's the time that they will complain. So complaints commonly arise in every establishment. It is normal. So while some might think that this bring negative implications to service, guest complaints, when resolved correctly and quickly, provide opportunity to improve the service and to develop a good relationship with the guest. So we should not always think that if there's a complaint, that is a negative indication, and we should always think in a positive way that all the complaints, it is an opportunity that we will improve our service, and it will enhance our good relationship with the guest. So that is for lesson number 1, dealing with guest complaints. Now let's be more specific. What are the processes, what we are going to do to handle guest complaints? Okay, that is for topic number 1, how to handle guest complaints. So again, let's listen again to Miss Naomi, the ASEAN Master, the same time assessor.
It is common among food and beverage establishments that some guests will have a problem with their food and beverage orders. If a guest or guests are satisfied, it is better if they tell the service staff in order to set in a place a course of action to solve the problem. The following are the guidelines when receiving guest complaints. First, welcome complaints from the guests and thank them at all times for raising the complaint. A food and beverage service staff should be open to listen and acknowledge the complaints from guests. Listen attentively and do not cut the guests while they're complaining. Keep a courteous but firm attitude and talk calmly so as not to offend the complaining guests and those nearby. Thanking the guests establishes a positive and cooperative atmosphere in which helps in making a rough situation smoother. Creating a positive atmosphere also shows willingly to listen and seriously in attending the problem raised. Being positive and friendly in dealing with guest complaints also sets the ground for a faster and more acceptable resolution. Next, apologize for the problem and inconvenience caused. Acknowledging the problem and apologizing for it and the inconvenience it caused may have or can go a long way. There are instances when a resolution is not instantly available. During these instances, making the guests know that their complaints are well recognized calms them down while waiting for their concerns to be resolved. Clarifying the details of complaints. Essential to resolving a guest complaint is knowing the nature and details of it. This helps in making the issue clearer, not just for the staff, but for the guests as well. When talking to the guests, the staff should aim to know the following: name of the person or persons involved, details of time, dates, and monetary amounts if necessary, product or services that caused the complaint, factual details like what was done and what was said by whom, actions or even inactions taken by staff or other people. Identify and review options to determine the possible solutions. Most food and beverage establishments have an established plan when faced with guest complaints. This, together with the wants of the guests and the point of view of all parties involved, must be taken into consideration when determining possible solutions. 5. Agree and confirm action to resolve the complaint. After possible solutions have been laid for consideration, the process for looking and agreeing to solutions should start. It must be remembered that the solution you're looking for should resolve the complaint quickly, practically, legally, and even satisfy all individuals involved. Once the resolution has been agreed upon, it should be done immediately as soon as possible. When receiving a complaint from a guest, you should take a quick and effective action regarding the concern to ensure that the resolution will be completed according to the specified time or the resolution is agreed quickly. 6. Keep the guests informed. It is important guests are informed about the progress of the action taken towards the complaint. In case there has been or you see a possible delay in the delivery of the solution, you should inform guests and provide a full explanation of the delay. 7. Refer complaints for appropriate action. Resolved and unresolved complaints should be reported to the restaurant manager. Resolved complaints will help in the formulation of new policies or the improvement of existing policies. Meanwhile, unresolved complaints should be reported to a more superior restaurant staff for appropriate actions.
So it was well discussed by the ASEAN Master and at the same time Assis or Miss Naomi about the process or the course of actions to handle guest complaint. So again, we will just recap what she is discussed on that particular video. So again, it is common among food and beverage establishment that some guests will have a problem with their food and beverage order. So it is normal that they will complain something, especially if their expectations did not met. So if guests are dissatisfied, it is better if they tell the service staff in order to set in place a course of action to solve the problem. So again, majority of the guests, if they encounter problem on the food and beverage, they will tell the service staff. So it is also important that they will tell it immediately so that the service staff can also provide the course of action promptly. So I will give to you the following guidelines on how to observe when handling guest complaints. So we have here the list how to handle guest complaints. First, we need to welcome complaints from the guest and thank the guest for raising the complaint. So we will not, you know, we will give a good smile. We will welcome the complaints and we will feel to them that we are happy that they raise a certain complaint and we need to thank them for raising the complaints. And then after we welcome the complaints, we need to apologize for the problem and the inconvenience. For example, here, the first one, thank you so much, ma'am and sir, for raising that complaint. And I'm sorry, ma'am and sir, for the problems or the inconvenience of your food and beverage or any services. And then for third one, clarify details on complaint. Ma'am and sir, may I clarify on these following problems? What is your point or what is the specific problems that you encountered in your food? And then identify and review options to determine possible solutions. For example, the problem is cold soup. So after you have clarified that the soup is cold, so what you're going to do is to give an option. Mom, would you like to reheat the soup or you will order a new soup? Okay, so you need to provide options for the possible resolutions. And then you need to agree and confirm action to resolve the complaints. For example, the guest would choose to just reheat the soup. Okay, so you will just agree, okay, ma'am, so we will just reheat the soup. You have a confirmation of actions. And then keep the guest informed. For example, there's a delay for 5 minutes. Hello, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. We have just reheat your soup by our chef. So we'll just wait for 5 minutes. According to the chef, after 5 minutes, the reheating of your soup is done. So I will just serve it immediately. And then next, refer complaints for appropriate action. If you are not the responsible person, you need to ask help or you need to refer these complaints to the appropriate person. So these are the tips for handling guest complaint. Number one, do not argue with the guest. Again, with the first tip or first guidelines, we need to thank and welcome the complaints of the guest. So we should not argue to the guest. Next, do not treat guests as complainers and view complaints as an opportunity. So we need to think in a positive way that the complaint is an opportunity to improve our service. It is not a barely complain. Next, we need to listen to the complaints and apologize and act quickly to resolve the problem. So we need to listen to the guest. Let us give them an opportunity to share all the problems that they encountered. And we need to apologize for the inconvenience. And don't forget to respond or to give solution quickly or promptly. Next, we need to use effective communication skills and interpersonal techniques. So we should be an enthusiastic. We need to be, we need to welcome the guest complaint. We should not argue with the guest. And we need also to use the interpersonal technique, just like we provide empathy to the bad experience of the guest. And be objective and courteous and discreet. We need to show the good attitude or good behavior in handling the guest complaint. And we need also to ask the right questions because there are also other questions that is not appropriate. So we need to ask the right question and let the guest feel that you are taking the matters seriously. That is why if the guest will tell you the detail of the problem, we need to listen carefully. We need to welcome their complaints or their problems. We need to listen carefully. That is an indication that we are taking the problems seriously. And lastly, we all know that if the guest will complain, some of the guests will shout. You have the body language is not good, but Still, as a service staff in the hospitality and tourism industry, we need to stay calm and positive. We should not be negative and we should not rattle. We need to stay calm. And we need to view again the situation as an opportunity to turn a problem into a positive service experience. So we need to think always that the problems is normal, the complaint is normal. We need to take it as an opportunity to grow, opportunity to mature, opportunity to make some modifications or changes of our service. The purpose of that is to improve. And lastly, this is the last slide. These are the tips for handling alcohol related complaints. So as we have mentioned here, this is example the common guest complaints like cold soup or wrong orders and others, or lack of cutlery, lack of plates. But for this slide or this picture or this topic, these are the tips for handling alcohol related complaints. There are some guests who are already drunk. They are commonly one of the initiator of the problem, or they will have a complaint. So there are instances when a guest complaints are alcohol related situations, though the way to deal with intoxicated guests might be similar to how the staff should deal with complaints of other nature. There are additional precautions that should be observed. So it is more difficult to handle guest complaints if they are intoxicated. So again, if we will hear the word intoxicated guests, it means that the guests are drunk. Okay, intoxicated guests. That is the term used in hospitality and tourism industry. Now, what are the right thing to do, or what are the tips in handling alcohol-related complaints? Number one, we need to remain professional. The intoxicated guest in this time, though that person is a professional, for example, professional doctor, professional attorney, but if that person is intoxicated, the professionalism is gone at the time. So we need to remain professional. Next, as much as possible, we should not touch the guests. Okay, we need to avoid touching the guests. It irritates the guests, especially the intoxicated guests. And then we need to involve the guests by providing options. We need to provide options A, B, C, D. We need to provide options. We should not dictate the guest what should be the right thing to do. As a service staff, we need to provide options to the guests. And lastly, we need to follow all house policies in handling alcohol-related concerns. So every establishment have their own policies. Every establishment have their own regulations, rules, laws that we need to follow. So we need to check or review the policies in the establishment that we are working in. So we are done with this lecture for handling guest complaint. Next video or next lecture, we will discuss on referring complaints because we only have two objectives for unit number 3. First is how to handle guest complaint, and number 2, if you are not the right person to deal with the problems or complaints, you need to refer it to the right person. That will be discussed in the next lesson. Thank you.